In the year of the new era, Blue Star was becoming more and more beautiful, and people enjoyed walking through its streets. Not far from him, a gay-haired guy saw a blonde girl filming a video, asking her subscribers to show their activity. Long gray ears suddenly appeared from the young man's head, which looked mesmerizing from the outside. It was 17-year-old student Lin Q, whose awakening type was to transform into a small white rabbit. Fans continued to write comments to the streamer, not understanding whether men could have rabbit ears like the young man behind her. The cunning lady asked her subscribers to send stickers if they thought she could handle the boy in a minute. The pensive girl immediately turned her attention to the hero, saying that he had the same ears as everyone else. Then she moved closer to him, and he felt awkward and didn't know how to behave. In an instant, the streamer spread her palm and used a power that emitted a purple light. The alarmed young man immediately jumped back, looking around and trying to understand what was happening. The girl said she had knocked a little rabbit off its feet, and the fans laughed and wrote that she deserved 13 rockets. Lying on the ground, the main character mentally called it pity that he had met such a nasty person on his way. The young man slowly got to his knees, putting his palm to his cheek to feel for abrasions. Even more shocking was that as he tried to get up, the young man was hit by a truck and thrown to the side. The angry driver called him an eared abomination, and the blonde told her followers that the rabbit was flying into the sky. Linko grew up in an orphanage where at the age of 15, he awakened the ability to transform into an animal, taking the form of a pathetic rabbit. At school, which was full of supernatural beings, he was constantly bullied. But on the Blue Star, the law of survival of the fittest prevailed. Finding himself in a forest with a huge number of ferocious beasts, the unfortunate hare could only wait to be torn to pieces. The enraged man called the boy unlucky for knocking him down with his new car, which now needed repairs. Approaching Lin Xiu, who was coughing up blood, the angry gentleman ordered him to get up, saying that he would pay for this. He was annoyed that the fool had decided to play dead, so he immediately used his powerful ability. The fighter shouted that he would teach the boy a lesson so that he would know how to touch his precious car. Squinting his eyes and clenching his teeth, the nervous hero mentally called himself unfortunate, not believing that he would die so ridiculously. At that moment, the truck driver's eyes froze and began to emit a cold beam directed at the helpless boy. After 35 million years, a suitable host was finally found, although it was not easy. Alarmed, Link suddenly opened his eyes and was shocked because he couldn't understand where he was. He was immediately given X-ray vision, binding, and space awakening hacking skills. This was followed by a system notification that the robot with the serial number was under the command of a young master. The unknown creature asked to be called simply by a number which was long enough for a name. For the first time in 1,000 years, the robot found an owner and used the power it had accumulated over 35 million years to save him, which impressed the hero. The kid started pressing different buttons, but his new companion said that he could awaken a new skill every day, but it would be random. It was all because of the host who had resurrected the young man. And because of this, the system lacked energy. So Link decided not to stay here. The tense young man asked if he could return to the present after being resurrected, and the robot replied that he would return to the place of his death. The guy asked if he would die if he got a useless skill, and the voice asked if he wanted to awaken the skill right now. The main character thought to himself that he had a chance to return to life, so he had to seize it. Putting all doubts aside, the daredevil decided to take a risk and press the button, confirming the awakening. The skill lottery was activated, after which the system congratulated the host on acquiring an SSS rank ability. Surprisingly, at that moment, the persistent Lin Q regained consciousness, finding himself in a body with rabbit ears. The shock truck driver who had run him over earlier couldn't believe that the kid was still breathing. Thanks to his new skill, the brave boy's attack and jumping abilities were enhanced, and he immediately launched into an attack. The fearless fighter landed firmly on the roof of the truck, severely damaging its body, which looked very impressive from the outside. The stunned opponent exclaimed that he would kill the scoundrel who dared to treat his car that way. The brave man immediately tried to counterattack him, responding firmly that he had no intention of dying. Then, emboldened, the warrior kicked his opponent, knocking him unconscious. Terrified, the streamer now refused to communicate with her viewers and asked the main character not to approach her. With a frightening smile, Lin Shu stretched out his arms, and the system wrote that the strength of his arms and the speed of his attack had increased. The temperature around them began to rise, causing the blonde's thin clothing to simply melt away. The girl felt dizzy for a moment, and the guy decided to cover her with something to avoid embarrassing the townspeople. The voice on the girl's phone viciously called him a brazen scoundrel and ordered him to take his hands off the beauty. The confident hero asked the fans to listen carefully and declared that he was the boss here and they had to obey him. The next day, the students at school discussed Lin Q with rabbit ears who studied with them in the same class. At that moment, the unflappable boy entered the classroom, where a crowd of charmers immediately gathered around him. One of the beauties called him a bunny and noted that today he was irresistible and very cute. All the girls bowed respectfully, promising not to do it again, and the hero was glad that they admitted they were wrong. A few seconds later, the young man realized that they were all talking about yesterday's situation. Thanks to the skills given to him by the system, the truck driver and the blonde from the street called him a real man of their age and a role model. The young man remembered that he had not yet received a new skill and turned to the robot, who said that the system would automatically start the lottery. The hero instantly acquired the E-rank skill of sewing peace, and with a red face stood in a circle of charming ladies. Soon the young man realized that thanks to this he could have a lot of fun because he was surrounded by beautiful girls. But this caused great dissatisfaction among the crowd of guys, each of whom liked a certain girl. The surprised young man could not understand why the technique did not work, and the robot said that pressing the button again was completely useless. Lino said that the skill meant that he had gained knowledge about all the seeds that existed in the world, and that the planty planet would take root and grow. The angry fighter exclaimed that the robot should have given the skill a code name that would not give false hope. At that moment, a male voice addressed him, calling him a white rabbit with a slight smirk. Li Nan, who had awakened the wind, decided to offer the boy a job, promising that if he was lucky, he would rake in tons of money. The serious hero replied that they could discuss it later because he was busy with important matters of the moment. The boy wondered what the bully who constantly harassed him was up to since he had suddenly warmed up to him today. His counterpart said that one of the city's clubs was hiring workers and was sure that they would welcome the brave young man with open arms. At that moment, it dawned on the stunned young man that there was some kind of catch in the offer, so he was in no hurry to agree. He calmly replied that he had no money problems, and Li Nin exhaled, saying that he knew that. Then the kid exclaimed that he hadn't been there, and Lin Shu smiled, saying that it didn't matter. The angry interlocutor slammed his fist on the table and shouted at the boy not to talk nonsense, because he was embarrassing him in front of everyone. A strict teacher entered the room and angrily asked if they wanted to be punished for fighting on school grounds. The feuding boys just looked each other in the eye, but did not continue to settle their differences. The homeroom teacher said that there would be a test next week, and students who had awakened their abilities would take a special exam. It was said that they would have a better chance of getting into Lingyu University, which seemed interesting to the main character. After the aura reappeared, the Blue Star created an educational institution specializing in training qualified, awakened individuals. Due to limited resources, the main method of assessing students' abilities was a special exam. LQ not only received the crappy ability to turn into a rabbit, but also a mediocre qualification of only 2 bronze stars. Now that he had a robot, he raised his hand without hesitation and said he wanted to participate. The tense teacher asked him not to even try, saying that his qualifications were too low and that he would only disgrace the school if he went there. It was said that the young man was not suitable for this, which felt to him as if a cobblestone had fallen on his head. The assertive hero firmly said that he still wanted to participate, but his classmates only laughed at him. The homeroom teacher noted that the boy had mediocre abilities and would be laughed at there, so there was no point in even trying. Severe Lin thought to himself that they would see how these arrogant dogs would talk when he had 13 skills. The teacher promised to give the student a chance if he could make it into the top 10 on the upcoming test. The fearless fighter said he agreed to these terms because there was no turning back. The strict teacher said that only the results would settle their dispute, which meant that there was no time to waste. The daredevil decided to fight and told himself that no matter what, he had to get into Linu. A few minutes later, he ran out to the school gate where 2 guys were standing and talking about current events. In addition to the test, the young man had to think about money for tuition because his salary was not enough and he had few savings. Suddenly, a luxurious black car stopped in front of Lin Shu as he was running, its brake pad squealing. At that moment, the door of the vehicle opened and a delicate female leg protruded from it. The bewildered hero looked ahead intently, trying to understand who was blocking his path. An incredibly beautiful girl with blue hair asked if he was the rabbit boy. The young man's mouth opened in surprise, and the guy behind him drooled at the sight of their goddess named Shinjin. Alarmed, Q did not understand why girls like to call him a rabbit so much, because he was very serious and should not be called that. The charismatic male introduced himself by name, but said that the beauty could call him whatever she wanted, for example, handsome. This brought a smile to the face of the blonde standing near the car, staring intently at the confident young man. The beautiful lady noted that her brother was still a prankster, and Lin immediately remembered that she was the host of the earlier broadcast. His counterpart said that she had come specifically to return his jacket, after which it became clear that she was also a student. The charmer whispered that social media was her little hobby and asked him to keep it a secret, but he didn't understand why. The young people's attention was drawn to a female voice that suddenly addressed them, interrupting their conversation. High school fairy Chinzen asked Ming if it was true that this was the guy she had been talking about. The girl replied that he had easily defeated the guy with 2 bronze stars and was sure that he could defeat anyone. Cracking his knuckles, the confident fighter said that if the beauties wanted, he could show them something. The young man was stunned to see the beautiful ladies simply walk away, but he still hadn't gotten their contact information, so he suggested they go somewhere. Thoughtful Shinjin asked if he was sure of his words and wondered if the 2 stars would be brave enough to challenge her. The lady said that she never refuses a duel and suggested they fight, noting that the winner would be determined the following week. Smiling, the brave man said he would simply listen to her and called her by name. And the dissatisfied lady asked who had given him permission to call her that. The girl said that if she lost, she would take back her words, and Linshu could make any wish, but she was sure that he would not win. Excited, Chung Ming advised her brother to take his jacket and give up on this idea, and Jin called her to follow her. The fearless warrior thanked her, but said he would not back down, then said goodbye to the beauties. Then the hero got on his moped and noticed his phone vibrating. Realizing that someone had sent him a message, he had received an order from a defenseless man who wrote that he was at the entrance to an internet cafe where they were going to beat him up. The stunned fighter couldn't believe that a stranger was willing to pay any amount of money just to be saved. He knew he couldn't pass up this opportunity, so he immediately pulled the starter handle and drove off. Meanwhile, the awakened bully, Jiang Sang, tearfully promised his attackers money, but they continued to swing their fists at him. The thug said that not everything could be solved with money and threatened that they would beat the pathetic boy to death. Suddenly, a man's voice calmly asked what they were doing, drawing the bully's attention. The brave Lin with rabbit ears asked why the scoundrel thought he could bully other people without punishment. The angry bully shouted, asking if he also wanted to die, and the brave man asked if he had any ideas on the matter. After that, the mysterious Chu snapped his fingers, remaining confident as if he had something in mind. Behind him was a whole crowd of fighters in yellow jackets, ready to destroy anyone who showed off on their territory. At the head was a fearless hero who understood that 2 hooligans could do nothing against a crowd of people. The cowardly thugs abandoned Jiang and ran away because they risked being beaten up. The frightened boy was very happy to be saved and couldn't believe that a group of thugs could be hired for delivery. He shouted after his attackers that if he saw them again, his brother would beat them up, and the puzzled Lin said that he was not his relative. The delighted youngster said that the hero had saved him, so now they were bound together forever. But the warrior said he preferred cash. The high school student said that from now on he would do whatever his savior asked, and in return he preferred 30,000. The joyful Chu understood that he would still have a lot of money left, even if he gave 100 to each of the 70 people who had come with him. After receiving payment from the rich kid sent to him from heaven, he smiled and asked what those freaks wanted from him. The kid replied that he was playing a female character in order to get married in the game, and those guys asked him to say something in the game. He tried to do so by changing his voice, but it turned out that the player was sitting right in front of him with his friend, which stunned the hero. The fat guy offered to give his savior a ride in his Rolls Royce, but the brave man was on a moped, so he declined the offer. On the way, the fighter noted to himself that he was very lucky today, thanks to his meeting with the beautiful Chinjin. They decided to return home early because he didn't want to embarrass himself in front of his goddess. The next day, the strict teacher told his students that they were starting the lesson, so he asked them to listen carefully. Tired, Link had been studying all night, and his body felt drained. But today the teacher was supposed to talk about the key points of the exam. The owner of the Reined Eyes mentally said that he wanted a new skill. The robot was tired of him pulling it day and night. A digital display appeared in front of the guy, saying that the system was asleep, but for him, it was wild. The host had acquired the skill of photographic memory, allowing him to remember everything he saw, as well as retrieve what he had learned earlier from the depths of his memory. The young man wanted to try out his new skill as soon as possible, and the class teacher turned his attention to him. Looking at the equation on the board, the hero grinned, calling it easy, and already had the solution in his head. It seemed to the young man as if all the letters, symbols, and numbers he had ever seen were imprinted in his memory, and now it was all easier than easy for him. The cunning boy wondered if this ability made him like an invincible god. At first, the man called the boy insolent, then angrily slammed his fist on the table, turning to him. He was furious that the student was reading a physics textbook in Chinese class, excusing himself by saying that he remembered a joyful moment. In a rage, the teacher shouted that they had written a bunch of dictations this year, and each time his scores barely passed the low threshold. Linko, completely calm, said he could bet that he knew the book in his hands by heart. Adjusting his glasses, the teacher noted that he should give up the competition so as not to disgrace the school. The teacher asked what Phoenix should do, and the unperturbed young man replied that he should embrace the moon and rest in eternal peace. The answer stunned the homeroom teacher, who had long since become disillusioned with his arrogant student. The strict man said that the boy was just lucky, but the hero added that Phoenix had no time to grieve and mourn his ancestors. The tense teacher could not understand how the kid accurately reproduced the second part of the sentence, but he thought it was quite logical. Laughing, the gentleman asked if the insolent boy still thought he could take the exam with his limited knowledge. The stressed students pointed out that they had studied this text last semester. The teacher had even asked them to memorize the passage. Comlin told his classmates that they would see each other at the exam and started to leave while the homeroom teacher fainted. Soon, the students began discussing which of the top 3 they would rather have in school and looked at the rankings table. A stunned Lin couldn't believe that the hero had almost topped the list, while the young man himself was confident that he would pass the exam with the help of his photographic memory. The brave man said that it was time to show his opponent what he was made of, while the bully himself almost fainted from shock. 10 days later, a large crowd gathered at the competition arena, and the talent contest was about to begin. The commentator asked the crowd to welcome the delegate from the 30th district who was among the top 100 students in the country. It was Chinzin, a student who ranked 18th in the overall rankings and was among the top 3 in the previous stage. The girl was embittered, and those around her assumed that it was because she had never been lower than first place before. But today, she had fallen to second. Lo was nearby, looking around in the hope of seeing someone he knew. The smiling young man turned to the goddess Chin and called her over, but she did not like his behavior. The girl acknowledged his victory and asked him to say what he wanted, and the young man said that she shouldn't take everything so seriously. Suddenly, he remarked that the beauty could invite him to dinner, and upon hearing this, she blushed slightly. The charming lady felt awkward and apologized for calling the hero a weakling earlier. The young man almost fainted from the sweetness and began to enjoy the incredible beauty of his counterpart. The young people's conversation was interrupted by a cheeky reporter who abruptly approached them and asked what they were doing there. The man noted that it was quite bold of the young man to take part in the test, considering that his awakening form was a white rabbit. Some viewers laughed and even got angry at the brave young man, saying that he should stay away from their goddess. Unexpectedly, the young man rolled up his sleeves, snatched the microphone from the host, and said that he had nothing to say to them. The daredevil showed them an obscene gesture, saying that the fools could pray for their favorites and hoped that they would fall into his hands. The stunning statement was met with silence from the audience, who did not expect such insolence from him. A tense man snatched the microphone from the arrogant kid's hands, shouting at him to stop talking. The angry guys below were ready to pounce on the scoundrel who dared to speak so loudly. The host said that this was a one-on-one battle, with the winner moving forward and the loser being eliminated. It was announced that the participants' numbers would be sent to their cell phones, after which the guys began checking their devices. Even the most vicious fighters were distracted because they needed to find out their order number in the competition. The commentator asked everyone present to pay attention to the table showing the names and points. He said that since the number of people was odd, one of them would be randomly selected to skip the round. The gentleman added that the participants in each round would be selected at random. But Lin Q, who was yawning, was already tired of listening to him. At that moment, it became known that the main character had number 66 and was called by the system. The crowd of rivals who hated him said that the stupid rabbit was just lucky, while he himself smiled silently. The host announced that the game would begin soon and asked the participants to enter the ring, and the atmosphere became more tense. Taking his place in the stands, the completely calm young man watched the proceedings with a slight smirk on his face. Looking at the digital scoreboard, the first thing he noticed was that the goddess Chinzin was also participating in the game. A few seconds later, a male voice loudly announced that one of the participants was injured and would be leaving the game. The winner of the first game was announced to be Chin, a middle school student who had performed very well. Her opponent didn't even have time to do anything and was simply frozen, which shocked many viewers. At the same time, the charming lady did not behave arrogantly and remained serious, which made her even more attractive. The surprised hero noted that she was truly an Ice Awakener, silver level, and a real goddess. The guy understood that he couldn't lose, so he decided to quickly learn more techniques and become a player worthy of the beauty. 10 minutes later, a spectacular battle began in the arena, which was even exciting to watch. Both opponents moved very quickly, not allowing each other to attack, which was commendable. Their ridiculous techniques put the tired Link to sleep as he tried to extract the essence from them for further use. The guy mentally turned to the robot, saying he wanted to chat with it a bit, after which the skill selection process began. The young man noticed that the system had recently become lazy and stopped talking to him, but it pointed out that this was not the case. At that moment, the host was congratulated on receiving an S rank, which was very rare compared to the junk he had been receiving in recent days. The hero thought that the problem was with the system itself, but he was wrong, and the robot advised him to watch his words. He was asked if he wanted to activate the skill right now, to which the fighter without hesitation gave a positive answer. At that very moment, Link's clothes tore, and then a rapid process of strengthening his body began. The young warrior's bones quickly fused together, making him very strong and tough, allowing him to fight more and more. Soon, the transformation was complete, and the brave man's body was covered with muscles that were visible to the naked eye. Smiling and looking at his body with pleasure, the hero wondered if the increase was really that powerful. Showing off his biceps, the young man said that he had now become a real man and no one could hurt him anymore. Chungming was amazed and couldn't believe that her brother, Rabbit, had become so huge and muscular. The slightly confused young man asked if she had never met any handsome guys before, and the girl seemed to be at a loss. It turned out that what embarrassed the blonde was that due to overzealousness, she had torn not only the guy's shirt, but also his pants. In that moment, he almost burned with shame and began to cover himself with his hands, running away so that as few people as possible would see him. Very soon, the host announced that the second round had come to an end and only 101 participants remained, each of whom was ready to move on. On the second day, it was announced that luck had smiled on player number 66, Lin Q. The following day was also crowned with victory for the main character, who was already bored with everything that was happening. The commentator asked him to say a few words, and the young man replied that he was bored and wanted to get some exercise too. The other guys were angry that they were desperately fighting in the ring, but this bastard was always lucky. An angry Lean shouted into the microphone that they had already gone through several rounds while this loser was still sitting on the bench. The dissatisfied guy shouted that he didn't agree with this and demanded fair treatment for all participants. The host said that due to Nan's withdrawal from the competition, the main character would participate in the next stage. Standing on the sidelines, Link told himself that now was the time to test his level after his latest improvement in characteristics. The Thunder Awakener and holder of 8 bronze stars was announced as the opponent of the fearless young man. The imperturbable fighter began to examine his opponent, who showed confidence as he warmed up his shoulders before the fight. Running his thumb across his neck, the stern opponent hinted that the pitiful young man would soon meet his end. Unmoved by the provocation, the hero said that there was no need to be so aggressive towards him. After a while, Lady said that the boy's lucky streak had ended with him and that he was extremely unlucky to be his opponent. Clenching his fists, the fighter threatened to smash the youngster to the ground, but his arrogant behavior was excessive and began to annoy. Filling his hand with energy, the vicious opponent said that he would torture the boy slowly, and after the fight, he would not be able to recover for a long time. Launching into an attack, the nimble warrior exclaimed that he had nothing more to add, so he wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. The unperturbed Link was ready for his move, so he waited for the moment to jump aside. At the very last moment, the brave man left his opponent with nothing, resulting in the attack being wasted. The judicious young man assumed that Lion would not be able to defeat his opponents with this technique as the recharge time was too long. The enemy, not willing to give up, immediately used the thunder technique, believing that he could deal with the insolent young man. The daredevil remained emotionless, as always, and managed to survive again. Even though the power of the blow was indescribably great, barely containing his anger, the warrior exclaimed that the scoundrel would not get away with it so easily, adding that he had forced him to resort to extreme measures. His opponent continued to charge his hand with an energy beam to make another attempt at destruction. In the past, the hero had been hit by such lightning bolts a couple of times, so he knew that if he was struck, the consequences would be catastrophic. The fearless fighter decided not to stand still and suddenly lunged forward, making a light jump. He told himself that he needed to get rid of Lely Young quickly so that he couldn't attack. The tense opponent noted in his mind that the youngster was moving very quickly, and in just a moment, he was right up close to him. The blue-haired man knew that Link had the same simple awakening, but his strength did not match it, so he had to withstand his attack. In the end, the brave managed to strike his opponent in the jaw, who immediately flew up. The arrogant Ladian's face was pressed into the ground, and the commentator called it incredible that the hero had defeated his opponent with a single blow. The young man was declared the winner, and he couldn't believe that his strength had increased so much after his stats were boosted. The delighted crowd greatly respected the brave young man who had performed very well in the fight. The vice president of the martial arts university, Jang Won, asked if his colleague had finished, and Lu Jun dismissed it as trivial. The man who had awakened the physical strength of a beast was looking at the newly crowned winner at that moment. The elderly deputy said that he had watched the round closely, so he could say with certainty that the boy had not used spiritual power. His mustachioed comrade said that was impossible because the power behind the blow was too great. The pot-bellied man said that if that was really the case, then the youngster's physical strength was incredible, and Jang Wen called the newcomer curious. The commentator announced that Lin Shu and Sheng Wei, number 12, would face off in the next battle. The hero's opponent had 8 bronze stars, and his beast form was that of a wolf. The focused hero noted his aura as terrifying and thought about improving his characteristics once again. The brave man stared sternly into the eyes of his opponent, who was ready to pounce on him at any second. But unexpectedly, the powerful opponent fell to his knees and, barely holding back tears, exclaimed that he was giving up. The next match also ended in victory for Lin Q, but he didn't even have time to take any action. In the next match, the joyful young man also said he was giving up and then asked for the legendary fighter autograph. Soon, the host congratulated the young man who had made it into the top 8, which earned him great respect from the audience. Standing behind him, the beautiful Qin Jin couldn't take her eyes off the young man she liked. After a while, the young man lay on the grass and sang a song, calling it boring that they called him invincible. The daredevil thought he would have fun, but in the end, it all turned out to be a waste of his time. The robot asked him to speak more quietly, and the young man remembered that he had not yet chosen a skill for today. The system congratulated the tail on acquiring the skill of marksmanship in rank 5, which was quite good. But this did not evoke any emotions in the main character, since he did not even have anything to shoot with. The fighter did not understand who would need a spear and a bow in the age of modern technology. So, he considered the skill irrelevant. Suddenly, his peace was disturbed by Qin's Jen, who came to the clearing as if she wanted to talk about something. The young man blushed at her beautiful appearance, and the girl said that she had come to tell him something. She announced that she was going to assemble a team to explore the bronze spirit market during the summer holidays and asked if he was interested. The bewildered Lin Q did not quite understand what she was talking about, and his counterpart noticed this and decided to explain everything to him. After the revival of spiritual energy, countless markets filled with beasts and rare treasures naturally returned. These creatures are valued not only for their skins, but also for their ability to produce special spheres that are useful for cultivation. Therefore, the beauty decided to invite the hero, whose attention was drawn to the mention of jewels. In his mind, the young man imagined Qin hugging him and telling him how scared she was, and he replied that they could all rely on him. The dreamy young man understood that this was his chance to get closer to the goddess whom he liked very much. But suddenly the enchantress said that there would be 6 other people besides him, so there was no need to worry about safety. The tense fighter said he accepted the invitation, but first asked about the other guys. Without answering his question, the beauty said she would contact him a little later. The young man said they could go to a cafe and chat, but the lady thought it wasn't the right time for that. She asked the young man to prepare for the game so that he would not be embarrassed when they met in the ring. On the last day of the competition, the jubilant spectators cheered for the goddess Qin, believing that she would defeat the pathetic rabbit. The commentator loudly announced the opponents who would face off in the match that many people were looking forward to. The stern Lin Q glared at her opponent, ready to start the fight at any moment. The imperturbable Jen remained focused and tried to think through her next moves before the fight began. The strong opponents tried to predict each other's moves, waiting for the command from the host. First, the fearless lady pointed her finger at the gay-haired boy, who didn't like it very much. She firmly stated that this time she would not let first place slip through her fingers, so she would fight to the end. The hero thought to himself that if it weren't for the gesture he had made during the interview, he would have gladly surrendered. Unexpectedly, the brave man advised his rival to admit defeat in order to avoid unnecessary fights. Smiling, the brave man calmly said that he would not be soft on the charming goddess. The commentator said that the game was starting, after which the participants took up fighting stances, waiting for each other to make a move. The girl said that a few years ago, she had earned a black belt in Taekwondo. So, in terms of physical fitness, she was definitely no match for the boy. Using his energy charge, the young man clenched his fist and with a sly grin asked her to be careful. Without warning, the trickster rushed into battle, but Qin Jun managed to dodge him, leaving him with nothing to show for his efforts. The incredibly fast lady soon found herself behind her opponent, a drop of sweat running down his cheek from nerves. At that very moment, a very strong kick was delivered directly to the spine of the arrogant Lin Q, who did not have time to prevent it. Nevertheless, the main character managed to maintain his coordination and braced himself with his hand on the floor, trying to quickly get up and continue the fight. Smiling, the brave man acknowledged in his mind that genius was truly worthy of the name, for the blow was just right. If it weren't for the strengthening of his body, which improved his physical condition, he would certainly not have withstood the attack and would have fallen to the ground. Soon, the smile disappeared from the warrior's face because he needed to stay focused and calculate his next moves. As he rushed forward, Link's inner voice told him that the fight had only just begun, so he still had a chance to win. The trickster kept trying to attack his opponent, whose defense was almost impossible to break through. The warrior lady successfully dodged every attack, remaining unharmed, which emphasized her professionalism. Swinging her elbow in the air, the lady noted that the pathetic boy was moving too slowly. The tense boy instantly turned around, unable to understand how she had gotten behind him. The merciless chin struck him directly in the shoulder, causing him unbearable pain. At that moment, the gay-haired youngster fell to the floor and began to writhe in agony. But he still had the strength to fight. The beauty suggested that he surrender, emphasizing that he was in good physical shape, but his skills left much to be desired. The charmer added that she hadn't even had time to use her special freezing skill, which spoke volumes. Getting to his feet, the slightly injured fighter confirmed in his mind that if this continued, he would simply lose. The young man began to ponder an important issue, realizing that he had almost no time left. In an instant, the young man seemed to see the light and mentally told himself that he had found a way out of this difficult situation. Suddenly, he raised his hand and demanded that the referee stop the fight, which no one expected. After that, the warrior jumped out of the ring as if nothing had happened, surprising the host even more. The daredevil picked up a long wooden stick, which looked very strange and incomprehensible from the outside. Smiling, the young man asked if he could use this object to make the fight easier. The tense gentleman emphasized that he had never met anyone as insolent as Lin Chu. Qinjin wondered who this boy thought he was and thought to herself that after all this, he might not even dare to blame her for cruelty. Looking at the boy holding the stick in his hand, the angry lady asked if they could start the fight again. The confident boy said that soon she would see his new weapon, namely a deadly mop. The arrogant fighter asked the girl not to cry when she lost, and she noticed that he had changed a lot when he picked up the piece of wood. The daredevil asked to be allowed to attack first and immediately jumped, rushing at the lady. His gaze was overly confident as he aimed the tip of the stick at Qinjin's forehead. The nimble girl knew she had to dodge immediately as she risked getting bruises on her stomach. The fearless warrior resorted to his body control skills, exerting enormous effort and concentrating as much as possible on his target. A slight smile remained on his face, which began to annoy the angry lady. The nervous girl couldn't understand why the boy had suddenly become so accurate, and now it was more difficult for her to dodge. Feeling a slight hatred for her opponent, the madam threatened to kill the scoundrel and not even think about sparing him. Scratching the back of his head, the worried boy excused himself by saying that it was just muscle memory and he didn't mean to do it. The stern goddess resorted to using her basic ice skill, icicles, asking the insolent man to shut up. The agitated young man asked her to listen to him to avoid misunderstandings, but it was too late for that. The focused Lin Chu was fully prepared to dodge the flying projectiles because he was not a coward, activating her freezing ability. The cold-blooded Chin Hen exclaimed that the boy had thoroughly annoyed her. The tense fighter complained of the cold and felt his body weakening, but he couldn't resist it. Trying not to panic, the main character noted in his mind that his opponent's magic was very fast. If the fighter hadn't improved his form, he would already be lying on the ground. But fortunately, things weren't so bad. At that moment, there were several sharp icicles nearby. So, he had to make a quick decision. No miracle happened, and as a result, they all reached their target, causing a powerful explosion. The imperturbable goddess asked the host to call an ambulance and announce the results. The thick smoke dissipated very slowly, and Link was still nowhere to be seen. But that did not bother the beauty. But suddenly, a black male silhouette began to appear in the fog, rapidly emerging from it. Sticking his head out and smiling slightly, the daredevil asked his opponent to relax, saying that he had only left her for a minute. Wiggling his rabbit ears, the guy rushed into the attack with a stick in his hands, showing that he would not give up so easily. The focused lady immediately noticed his incredible speed, so she decided to be more careful. The brave young man decided not to waste any more time on empty talk and gripped his long wooden cane tightly. The hero's strength was so great that it was capable of piercing Qin's icy armor, whose hand was practically numb. The warrior lady thought to herself that she would fight to the last drop of blood, but would not give her opponent first place. still standing in a fighting stance. The girl repeated in her inner voice that she had no intention of giving up. At that very moment, the second-rank silver breakthrough began, giving her even more power. The nervous Linshu immediately realized that if he slipped up somewhere, everything would go downhill and end very badly for him. Unexpectedly, the young man turned to the referee and asked him to stop the fight, saying that they were playing unfairly. The angry man exclaimed that it was not cheating at all and asked the fool to stop talking. Sensing something was wrong, Jin noticed that her opponent had not attacked her because of the breakthrough, and this seemed suspicious to her. Still, the beauty smiled quietly, admitting to herself that she hadn't expected the boy to be so nice. The confident lady asked the boy to stop his tricks and come to her to fight. With his legs spread wide, the fearless young man agreed to her proposal, believing that it would be unforgettable. Pointing her finger at him, the charming girl emphasized that he should be careful because now she was much stronger. Leaning his stick on the floor, the daredevil decided to jump in order to attack directly from the air. He managed to fly up quite impressively, which gave him the opportunity to attack his opponent from behind. Tense, Lin noticed that the speed and power of his opponent's attacks had greatly increased and assumed that it was all due to the breakthrough. At that very moment, the cane was thrust into the stone floor with a crash, instantly destroying it. The fighter, thrown off balance, lost his coordination and simply fell. Without even having time to understand what was happening, the focused girl continued to use icicles against him, rising above the ground as she did so. She looked maliciously at her opponent, who still could not recover and resist her in any way. The sweaty and very nervous hero mentally said that this was the end and nothing could be done to fix it. With his last ounce of strength, he blocked the attacks, but he knew that nothing could save him now. His hands were very cold, and it felt as if the young man was rapidly losing consciousness. An angry Linu told himself that he had to fight, because if this continued, he would definitely lose. In an instant, anger filled his heart and gave him a boost, causing the warrior to rush back in a battle at full speed. His unexpected move greatly alarmed the goddess, who froze in place for a moment. Thrown back, the maiden exclaimed that she had underestimated her opponent, who understood that he could not allow her to attack him again. To her shock, her opponent suddenly appeared behind her and grabbed her arms, immobilizing her. The angry lady called him a fool and ordered him to take his hands off her, but the warrior cried out that he would never do such a thing. The dissatisfied girl tried to break free, while the guy noted in his mind that her strength was too great. The daredevil continued to hold his opponent in his arms, but she gradually managed to push him away. In the end, the nimble lady did a somersault, and soon he found himself on his back. The observant Shinjin noticed blood flowing down his body and asked him to remove his hands immediately. The angry young man said he would not let her go until she admitted defeat and was very insistent in his words. The brave man threatened that he had a rabbit bite, and if his victory was not announced, he would really bite the defenseless girl. He didn't care about the exam. He just wanted to win, and this attitude was already a little scary for the beauty. At one point, the charming Chin sighed heavily, realizing that she had no other choice. Raising her hand, the exhausted lady exclaimed that she was giving up, which came as a great shock to the referee. Even more surprising was the fact that after that, Linshu suddenly relaxed and simply lost consciousness. The surprised opponent immediately turned her attention to the fallen guy and began to call him by name. The agitated lady began to ask what had happened to him, but received no answer. The concerned lady noted that the hero had overdone it and asked if it was really necessary to treat himself that way. She began to ponder something, but suddenly was enveloped by the rabbit's gentle paws. Feeling uncomfortable, the girl screamed for him not to come near her, but her words had no effect. The very alarmed hero realized that he was in the body of a huge hare and immediately wondered what had happened to him. Frightened, the boy screamed loudly and woke up, soon realizing that it was all just a nightmare. The system congratulated the host on improving his skills and added that the white rabbit had been successfully transformed into a vagrant. The angry guy exclaimed that it was all some kind of mistake, and the robot said that yesterday he was in a coma and could not choose the skill himself. Calming down, the young man decided to spin the roulette wheel again, saying that lately he had been getting nothing but E-level junk. He received the ability to awaken the cosmic system, but there was no sign of joy on his face. The system detected that the young man already possessed certain skills, so the fusion process began, which frightened him greatly. Everything happened very quickly, and soon the robot congratulated the hero on his successful evolution and transformation into a B-rank beast. The tense fighter began to carefully examine his body, trying to understand what had changed in it. The rabbit synthesis system gave the host a number of advantages of the space system that would help him make his dreams come true. The system announced that this was a storage space which was currently empty but could be used to store anything. The boy called it cool, and the robot added that in addition to this, he had awakened the skill of any door. Thanks to this, a person could open a door that allowed them to teleport to any point within a distance of 5 m. This seemed quite interesting to Lin Q, who had his head bandaged and was slowly getting out of bed. The young man realized that he could move anywhere within a certain radius and decided to test it out right away. Being emotionless, the hero began to think about where he would like to go right now. Wanting to simply test his skill, he said that he needed to go downstairs immediately. The process of moving was completed very quickly, and in the end, the brave man fell on his back in another room. What was striking was that he hit his head in a room that belonged to a surprised lady. The alarmed girl immediately grabbed a sharp knife, trying to figure out what kind of scoundrel had broken in her home. It was 20-year-old Li Wei, the landlord's daughter, who first asked how Link ended up there. The nervous young man asked the beauty to calm down and let him explain the situation, but she got angry and began to threaten him. The next day, the young man went to the cafe, thinking to himself that he was lucky because the girl could have killed him and he would not have been able to go on a date. Today, the goddess suddenly sent him a message and was already waiting for him at the cafe. But she was not alone. The main character was instantly upset that there were other people around her, but he didn't show it. The charming Chin asked if everything was okay, reminding him that they would be leaving soon. So the fighter had to take good care of himself. She said that she had invited them here so that the researchers could get to know each other in advance. The excited healer Jiang Sang and the sound Conqueror Chung Ming noticed that the rabbit looked very pitiful. The group leader in turn introduced the brave man to the real powerhouse of their team, the strongman Jiang Chun. The Bronze Fire Lord greeted the young man, saying that he had seen the guy's fights and called him very cool. The lady added that there were 2 more people, but they were busy with admissions at the moment, so they couldn't be present. She suggested that the young man had also received a bunch of offers from universities, and he replied that he had received a whole stack of them that morning. Earlier that day, he had indeed received a package from the postman, but he did not look happy at the time. The famous educational institution that Lin Shu had never dared to dream of before was now competing with others for him. Upon learning this, the charming Jin smiled slightly and gathered the courage to ask an important question. The lady asked which university the main character was going to choose, even though she knew it would be quite difficult to decide. The slightly excited young man couldn't understand why she suddenly decided to ask about it. The guy replied that he was leaning towards a martial arts school and asked if the girl was going to apply to the same place as him. The beauty confirmed this, saying that she had always lost him and was not ready to accept it. So, she decided to try to defeat him there. The brave man said he was ready to fight at the goddess's first command, and she asked him to stop fooling around and noted that it was time to get down to business. It was said that they were interested in a spiritual beast hiding in the location, namely an ice fox. The leader added that they needed to find the sphere and said that the creatures usually lived in groups, so she couldn't handle alone. Being focused, she said that this was why she needed the help of the people gathered in one place. Sincere Chin knew that they had all done well on their exams, so she was doubly grateful to them for joining the team. The determined Yung Chong said that it was also an experience for them, and Jiang Sang noted that they were very lucky to have Brother Lin on their team. The young man himself said that he was lucky that the goddess had invited him to join her, adding that it was a great honor to be in the same group with them. The shy beauty gently asked to be called by her name, because otherwise she would be embarrassed. Feeling confident, the leader said that they would leave in 3 days, gathering at Link's house at 10 o'clock in the morning. Time flew by very quickly, and soon the day of departure arrived. Half an hour before departure, the hero ordered the robot to get out. The system congratulated the host on obtaining an E-rank skill, namely culinary mastery, which he did not need at all. The owner instantly mastered all the languages of the world and was also well-versed in all Western and Chinese folk medicine. The young man asked why his skills had been so weak lately, and the robot replied that he had been lucky before because he had acquired a cosmic system. Remembering this, the guy asked what was going on with the space, and his companion asked if he wanted to try it out. At that moment, a rather large tactical backpack appeared in front of him, enveloped in energy. Soon, the inventory was inside Lin Q, which looked very impressive and evoked positive emotions in him. The delighted young man threw the bag into the huge space and did not feel its weight at all. The robot said that there was still plenty of room inside, so he could take the whole room with him, which sounded quite loud. At that moment, the truck's horn sounded and a member of the team leaned out and told his brother that they had arrived. The main character waved to the guys, saying he was already running, and at the same time noted in his mind that this skill was very useful. Sitting in the car, The lovely Chung Ming looked closely at the guy's stomach and realized that he possessed the ability of the cosmic system. The tense young man asked the guys not to look at him like that, and the surprised Jang Sang said that he had a two-element awakener in his hands. It was mesmerizing and fascinating to see the boy's abdomen glowing and space visible through it. Thoughtful Ching Zin said that the cosmic system was quite a rare phenomenon and asked how he had managed to achieve it. The delighted blonde asked to touch Link's stomach, which was a little strange, but understandable. The alarmed boy really didn't want her to, but the beauty said that it was the first time she had seen such skills. The truck driver chuckled, saying that Brother Lin was funny, and briefly took his eyes off the road. Then, Shen Yue said that they were almost there and asked his comrades to focus. The tense hero began to look through the windshield, trying to assess the situation ahead. A few minutes later, the guys left the vehicle, not even knowing what awaited them next. Not far from them stood several people behind whose backs a real magical chaos was unfolding. The imperturbable fighter began to examine everything carefully, but at the same time did not feel even a drop of fear in his soul. No one knew how the beast habitats had appeared, but everyone assumed it was related to the restoration of spiritual energy. Although these terrifying creatures could enter the human world, they rarely did so on their own initiative. The human race both deserved and did not need to fear them. So, the situation was considered a stalemate. Regardless of whether a fighter was bronze or silver, they would inevitably be monitored by government agencies. They were talking about those who were the last line of defense between two worlds, which sounded kind of creepy. The man in uniform said that registration for today was over and added that if the guys wanted to enter, they had to fill out a form and come back tomorrow. Leo, who remained calm, began to examine the huge purple portal, which exuded coldness. The young man felt that the aura in this place was much stronger than in others, and this aroused his interest. Suddenly, his peace was disturbed by little Ming, who hugged his arm and asked what he was doing, calling him a bunny. The girl asked him not to say her full name, and the boy wondered where she was taking him. The beauty replied that she was taking him to a room to rest, and she still hoped that he would let her touch his bottomless stomach. A bearded man stood aside, thinking to himself that the guys looked quite well off, especially Jong Sung with his car. The blonde asked what he planned to do with these fat cats, and his brother was most interested in the fat guy with the car. The leader of the wolf pack, the stern Yang who ordered his comrades not to stray a step from this group when they went inside. He said that they were always here as visitors, and their job was to take care of rich, weak adventurers like these. Smiling slightly, the gentleman began to walk forward, saying that soon the bastard would see for himself. In a low voice, Yang said that this quiet place would become a graveyard for foolish children. The next day, Qinjin's team headed for the entrance to the portal with the fearless Link leading the way. The brave man soon stepped out of the teleport and found himself in a green meadow, which at first glance seemed quite safe. In that same moment, all the boys found themselves in the meadow and began to enjoy the incredible beauty of nature. The surprised youngster did not expect the space of the spiritual beast to be so large from the inside. The leader of the group said that their destination was deep within this place in the snowy fields, which would take at least 2 days to reach. The lady asked Lil Min not to forget to keep an eye on what was happening around them because it was very important. The beauty asked her not to worry, saying that she had already turned on the sound system's radar, which allowed them to use echolocation. The main character emphasized that she was well prepared, and Shinjin said that since everyone was ready, it was time to move on. Without wasting any time, the group continued onward, unaware that they were already being followed. One of the wolves asked if they should attack now, but Yang replied that the terrain was too open and they would be quickly discovered. The cunning leader said that they would wait until the kids entered the forest and then have some fun with them. In the clearing, longhorn goats grazed on plant roots and actively attacked the creatures approaching them. The bronze spirit beast suddenly became alert, as if it sensed something suspicious nearby. Suddenly, the entire herd of creatures was attacked without even having a chance to try to escape. The goats were attacked by Chin's group, whose members chose to simply burn them. Dissatisfied, Linu told his foolish comrades that the animal's wool was worth money, and that they were acting foolishly. He decided to see what else of value could be found around, and a joyful Chung Ming exclaimed that she had found 2 spheres without skills. But that moment was ruined, because the guys noticed a whole pack of bloodthirsty wolves on a hill. The excited leader asked her companions to be careful and not to take the monster's hidden attacks lightly. It was said that these beasts were extremely vengeful, and if they discovered that someone from the pack had died, they would become even more vicious and their attacks would be more powerful. The wary hero asked what would happen if the leader of the wolves who had abandoned their own in trouble died. One of his comrades exclaimed that these creatures were very cunning and their leader would not allow them to defeat him so easily. The cool-headed warrior used a special spiritual portal, saying that he would find the cowardly leader himself. Smiling, he asked the guys to stay put and take care of themselves, promising to return as soon as possible. Without wasting any time, the brave warrior launched an attack from the air, swinging a two-element awakener at one of the monsters. The incredibly effective blow landed squarely on the animal's head, which immediately fell to the ground, its tongue hanging out. The stunned pack of wolves immediately realized that their leader was dead, that they had nowhere to run, and that the same fate awaited them. The hero's professional actions impressed Jang, who called his cosmic skill incredible. The brave man suggested skinning the beast and searching for the item they needed, because the spiritual monster was much stronger than the others. At that very moment, the fighter found a yellow sphere with a hidden skill, shocking his comrades standing around him. The thoughtful guy began to ponder what skill was inside the charming little thing. Without thinking twice, the young man handed the ball to the team Swolf, saying that he would be responsible for revealing it. His comrade said that the market value of the sphere was about 2 million and promised to transfer the money to the young man as soon as they got home. After concentrating as hard as he could, Shungue stepped forward and decided to use the item in front of everyone. The mesmerizing process began very quickly and proceeded rapidly, so the guys watched closely. His delighted comrades noticed that the beast had succeeded and remarked that it was really cool. Stunned, Lino thought to himself that if he had known how cool this thing was, he would have kept it for himself. Then the hero said that he had daily skills and used the system to get another one. The robot immediately congratulated the host on obtaining the physical enhancement skill, but there was no joy on his face. The wary young man clearly remembered that he had already received this ability a couple of times. Suddenly, the clothes on his body began to tear, which caused alarm in the heart of Chinzen, who was standing right behind him. Embarrassed, Chung kept her eyes on the handsome guy, and the system did not consider it luck that the guy had received this skill 3 times. Feeling awkward, the guy suggested taking a break and said he would change and come back, and the group leader agreed to his request. The hero realized that his strength had tripled, and the robot explained that his power now corresponded to that of an awakened being with 6 silver stars. The shocked fighter did not expect to hear such words, and the system asked him with a smile to just enjoy it. In the evening of the same day, the guys gathered around the campfire where they discussed pressing issues and further steps. The laughing Linu smiled constantly and behaved very strangely, which began to annoy Chin, who was sitting next to him. She exclaimed that the youngster had returned from the forest in pain, but he was happy because his strength had increased. Alert! Chung Ming whispered to the commander that they were being watched, and the stern lady asked if there could be someone else there. The blonde replied that after observing, she had discovered that they were being followed and said that they needed to move one after the other, keeping their distance. The serious Jin had heard that there were illegal organizations hunting people like them, so she urged everyone to be careful. It was said that disappearances were quite common here and that it was difficult to track them down because they left no traces after the murders. The woman understood that they had to be careful as they were dealing with very dangerous people. The lady added that if it was who she was talking about, they had been following them since they entered the forest. The main character put his hand on her shoulder, confidently, saying that they would deal with their opponents and promising to protect her. The embarrassed lady meant that everyone should be ready to fight back, and the young man did not contradict her and agreed with everything. The next morning, Linshu woke up to a system notification that they had received the E-rank taming skill. Getting up, the young man yawned, complaining that he had been eagerly awaiting today's skill, but he had gotten drunk and suddenly heard a scream. The alert boy immediately realized that it was Chinzen's voice, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. Going outside, the stunned fighter saw a huge, 2-headed snake that posed an incredible danger. The hero, covered in sweat, didn't even know how to act in such a situation, but there was no time to waste. The robot sent him a notification that the speed cobra was extremely fast, very poisonous, and difficult to tame. The nervous young man realized that he could get information through the skill he had acquired, and that wasn't so bad. Feeling tense, he shouted at his comrades to step back and not attack the monster at close range. The huge creature continued to shoot rays of poison at the pathetic humans who flew away. The leader, keeping a cool head, suggested that her comrade try to work together, and he immediately agreed. The guys rallied together and used their abilities to defeat the merciless monster. An energy projectile exploded near the cobra, affecting it and causing it to suffer from pain. At the same time, the creature was wounded in the tail by an icicle, causing it to cough up blood. Looking at the falling snake, Chin said it was damn dangerous, and Chung Ming noted that the monster was very nasty and smelly. The smiling Lin picked up a knife and said that the moment had come for a real man. While Jungin noticed that something was moving inside the beast, the wary hero decided to take a closer look and asked the others not to come near. Without thinking twice, the brave man decided to cut open the huge snake's belly to see what was inside. What was striking was that a gopher with a docile temperament, well-versed in soil, but poor at digging, burst out. Stunned, Jang couldn't believe that they were looking at a mole, while Qinjian and Chengming called it cute. The slightly bewildered Link noted that there was no need to be afraid of this creature, as it had already jumped onto his shoulder and was hugging him. Suddenly, the clever creature rushed towards the charming leader, who was frightened and even a little confused. The beauty began to stroke the gopher, calling it obedient, while the hero sensed a potential threat. The young man, in turn, was busy cutting up the huge monster with a sharp knife. He was focused on the process because he understood that he could rummage around in the belly and find something else interesting. At that moment, the warrior spoke up because he had managed to find several spheres, which was a pretty good result. The observant Qin realized that the nimble mole wanted to get the items in the warrior's hands. The animal immediately jumped out of her hands onto the ground, and the guy said that he could not even think about getting the magic balls. The little creature began to wriggle in every way, as if trying to prove something, and the hero realized that he wanted an exchange, but replied that he did not believe him. Unexpectedly for everyone, the cunning monster pounced on Linshu and snatched one of the spheres from his hands. In the end, the couple of rare items simply shattered and turned to ash, which was very upsetting for the boy. Zhanggan tried to calm him down, saying that they were just a couple of balls. But the young man thought to himself that they were worth a lot of money and that the rich man couldn't understand that. The extremely serious Jin suddenly said that she could hear someone's voice somewhere nearby. A bright yellow light began to glow nearby, as if signaling something to the team. Tense. Chengming felt that they were surrounded by a team of spirit beasts and added that there were a lot of them. At that moment, a powerful explosion rocked the ground, causing destruction that looked frightening. Moles similar to gophers began to jump out from under the ground, each carrying multicolored spheres, stunned by what they saw. Linshu and his companions were speechless and simply froze in place, unable to believe that such a thing could be possible. A whole crowd of animals began to move towards them, but they were pursuing their own, not entirely clear goal. The cute animals piled the shiny balls into a heap, enjoying their incredible beauty. The gopher said that this was gratitude for the 2 Earth-type spheres that the shocked hero had given him. After a while, Chung calculated that they had a total of 213 spiritual objects, some of which were magical. The brave man suggested that there were no rare or Earth-type items in the pile, as they had been absorbed by moles. The fighter decided to give the fire sphere to Junshun, who really wanted to acquire the corresponding skill. The lovely Qinjin said that the young man could take the rest of the spheres for himself, and at first, he thought he had misheard her. The girl repeated it again, saying that it was thanks to him that the monster had been easily defeated, so the reward should belong to him. The blonde asked if the moles wanted anything in exchange for the items, and the young man replied that all these spheres were useless to the creatures of the earth element. Smiling, the main character began to collect the magic balls, saying that he would not be modest since his comrades had offered them themselves. The thoughtful leader asked if he wanted to try to absorb them, which sounded unexpected. Concentrating as hard as he could, the brave young man decided to do it, thinking that he had never done anything like this before. Seeing the sudden appearance of a yellow light, Link's inner voice said something about a strange feeling. Unexpectedly, the fighter made a breakthrough and now possessed 3 copper stars. Surprised, Jiang Sang congratulated his brother, and Qin realized that the sphere was so powerful that it instantly caused an evolution of skills. The warrior said that he had been training hard for a month, and the joyful lady noted that now the team's combat effectiveness had increased a little more. She patted the gopher, thanked him, and then said that they needed to move on. So, it was time for him to go home. Suddenly, Lin grabbed the mole by the collar, saying that he had a job for this youngster. But his counterpart did not quite understand him. Looking suspiciously at the cute little animal, the young man asked him to follow them underground with his companions. Behind a large rock was a group of wolves who continued to secretly watch the young people. The comrades asked their boss for permission to attack the boys who had come out of the forest, but he asked them not to worry. Confident, Yang Hu said that they could easily deal with the kids, but they needed to let them go a little ahead deep into the location. The cunning criminal said that when the youngsters let their guard down and breathed easily, they would attack them. In the evening of the same day, Linshu supervised the work of the gopher, who dug a fairly deep hole. Holding a stack of wooden stakes at hand, the guy thanked him for his help in placing them. The cute little animal continued to help him, moving very quickly, so no time was wasted. The boy asked him to tell his companions that they needed to leave the forest immediately. Then he began to pour blue poison on the ground, saying that a single drop of it would prevent anyone from escaping unharmed. During his treacherous actions, the brave man did not even think of showing mercy to anyone. But his intentions were not entirely clear. Soon, the hero waved to the moles, asking them to be careful and not let the other spiritual beasts catch them. Jin said that all the traps had been set, but Chung Ming had some news for them. The trio gathered around the fire where the blonde decided to tell her sister and the rabbit some important news. The girl said that a group of strangers had stopped about 500 meters away from them and could clearly hear everything they were saying. The girl added that their enemies would attack them at night, which caused Jangon to panic. The alarmed young man had heard that the wolf gang often hunted and killed newcomers. The unflappable Lin Q realized that the boys were nervous, and if this continued, the situation would go downhill. In an instant, the brave man stood up from the log and said firmly that they were all behaving inappropriately. Keeping his cool, he expressed his hope that everyone would remain calm in battle. They were told that their opponents knew nothing of mercy, so any carelessness could cost them their lives. The brave man began to give orders to his comrades. While the pensive Chin-hen stood aside and watched silently, the lady understood that she should have said these words as she was the captain, but now she herself had succumbed to panic. In her mind, she noted that Lin Shu acted very calmly even when threatened with danger, and her comrades liked that. At that moment, the young man turned to the silent lady, who immediately turned her attention to him. The confident fighter said that if the beauty was afraid, she could always rely on him. Adjusting her charming hair, the lovely girl said that she had high hopes for the brave man. The guy almost fainted from the cuteness and even started to fall down, which scared his comrades standing around him. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, a pack of wolves stumbled upon the boys' camp and immediately noticed the tents ahead. The cunning Yang-hu walked ahead of his comrades, quietly saying that the long, aided hunt was about to begin. The leader ordered the 2nd and 7th to approach from the north, the 6th to move south, and the 4th and 5th to attack from the west. But one of the subordinates was not given an order, and this alarmed him while the rest of the fighters had already rushed to run. The commander ordered his men to surround the boys and not let anyone leave because they had been working toward this goal for a long time. The man who remained standing nearby told the boss that it all seemed a little suspicious, but his words were not entirely clear. In an instant, the guy with the scar on his face fell into a trap that activated immediately. Terrified, the guy flew into the air where strong ice shackles began to encircle him. Then, incredibly sharp spikes pierced the careless gangster who could only scream in pain. A very nervous Young-Hu shouted, wondering what was going on because just a minute ago, everything had been calm. Finally, the wolf gang realized that there were traps around the perimeter. So, the leader ordered the remaining guys to retreat immediately. The serious commander ordered a report on the casualties, and one of the fighters replied that the 7th and 6th were dead. He added that a poisoned spear in the pit had pierced the stomach of the 4th, which angered the stern man even more. Lo came out of the tent yawning and asked if Jana had been raised in a barn and why he was disturbing people's sleep at night. The evil criminal smiled, saying that he had been hunting them all day, but in the end, he himself had become the prey. Using his ability, the merciless enemy said that it didn't matter what level they were at, because death awaited them anyway. The fearless guy simply raised his hand and joined his fingers, then said that they would see who would die today. Then the daredevil snapped his index and middle fingers, as if trying to activate something against the uninvited guests. The wary opponents raised their heads and looked at the sky. Realizing that they were in trouble, the brave hero ordered his comrades to rush into attack on the confused enemies. As an excellent opportunity had presented itself, lightning began to flash everywhere, and energy charges struck the wolves who did not understand what was happening. The strongman Yung-chan used his giant ball skill, and the mage resorted to activating his Sea of Thunder skill. Extremely tense, Yang-hu exclaimed that it was an ambush, but he didn't even know how to get out of it at that moment. Struggling to resist panic, the commander ordered everyone to scatter, as it was the only way to escape. The unperturbed Lingyu turned to Qinjin, who immediately replied that she was ready to act. The charming lady immediately activated her spiritual skill, Ice Brand, which had saved her many times before. The criminals, frozen in place, immediately noticed the sharp ice blocks approaching them. It was stunning for them that now everyone had lost the ability to move because they were frozen. Then a huge fireball came into combat readiness, posing a danger to all of them. A nervous comrade told the boss that the 4th had died, so it was increasingly unsafe for them to remain on the battlefield. Activating his ability, the stern Yang who said that they would show the pathetic youngsters what real hell was like. At that moment, the powerful team split into beginner and regular silver level fighters. Surprised, Jin noted in her mind that their aura was quite strong, so it was not possible to act rashly. Calmly, Tu said that it was important to remember that they were just defending themselves so as not to become like the villains. The commander asked him not to talk nonsense and said to herself that these guys were much stronger than them. She exclaimed that she would take care of the enemy leader and ordered the rest to stick together and deal with the other targets. The main character assumed that the girl had decided to show off, so he lightly slapped her on the shoulder. Clenching his fist and smiling, he confidently asked her not to be afraid, reminding her that he was here for a reason. The shy beauty looked away and whispered that she wasn't afraid. The charmer said she would go first and wished everyone luck while the brave man asked the guys to get ready for battle. The young man decided to finish quickly and help Shinjin, but first he began to give orders to his comrades. He asked Jang to take a safe position and the rest to protect him, which shocked everyone. The opponent with the mohawk looked at the youngster and, calling him a bronze chick, asked if he had decided to die first. Looking at him angrily, the boy asked why he was calling him names when he was just very young. The embittered opponent immediately rushed to attack, and the brave boy asked his comrades to be extremely careful. At that very moment, the treacherous enemy used his tornado skill, which sucked in everything in its path. Xinyue, agitated, asked his brother to be careful because the danger was approaching him. The fearless warrior looked only ahead, and it was impossible to tell that he was in any way frightened. The stunned wolves could not believe that such a powerful move would not work on the nimble fighter. With a sharp swing of his long stick, Linchu tossed his opponents into the air, and then they flew away like feathers. Stepping on a guy with the mohawk, the young man asked how the scoundrel could have fallen when he hadn't even used 10% of his strength. Impressed, Jang called him cool again, and the brave young man replied that he had simply given him an excellent stick. Meanwhile, Chinj looked into the eyes of her cunning opponent, who was much more difficult to defeat. The ruthless Yonghu leaped forward, exclaiming that now she had nowhere to run, so death was inevitable. The tense hero noticed that the girl was in a difficult situation and immediately rushed to her aid. The warrior found himself behind enemy lines in an instant, but attracted their attention with his noisy actions. Without showing even a drop of mercy, the cold-blooded fighter delivered a crushing blow to the scoundrel's head. As a result, the cunning bastard managed to dodge, but quickly noticed that 2 of his close associates had been killed. Nervous Yang exclaimed that the rabbit had clearly used some trick, and he asked if it was so shameful to admit that he was worse than someone else, giving his opponent a stern look. The brave man said that since they were talking about tricks, he should try something. The alarmed wolf began to cover his groin, exclaiming that the boy had not warned him about such techniques. Out of fear, he made a sharp leap backward and ended up at a great distance so he could prepare for the next attack. The enraged opponent said that the insolent kid had made him damn angry and he would not let him get away with it. Without wasting any time, the criminal began to move forward, pursuing his goal of getting close to his enemy. In his rage, he was determined to beat this pathetic rabbit to a pulp and mince him without any hesitation. The sweating young man struggled to hold back his opponent's onslaught, but he did not even think of giving up. The merciless Yonghu continued to pressure the youngster, trying to corner him and prevent him from moving. The nimble fighter managed to remain unharmed, and even knocking him off his feet was a very difficult goal to achieve. The tense fighter thought to himself that his enemy's skills were very strong, so he couldn't just fight like this and had to come up with something. Growing angrier with every passing second, the bristly criminal shouted at him not to dare get distracted. In an instant, his sharp blade was a centimeter from the youngster's cheek, which made him very nervous. Greedy Young waved his arm incessantly, trying to hook the boy, but he couldn't do anything. The gentleman understood that he needed to deal with the rabbit quickly because his tiger-like rage would not last long. Approaching closely, the angry wolf asked the boy to be a good boy and try his powerful whip. The dim-witted fighter couldn't understand how his opponent was going to attack him and noted that he didn't like it at all. At that moment, the nimble made a high jump to increase the range of his attack and strike from the air. Nervous Link noted to himself that the whip was quite a good weapon, but it wasn't enough to defeat him. Still, the powerful whip hit the guy in the face, and he lost his coordination but remained conscious. He realized that silver-level abilities should not be underestimated and decided that he needed to come up with a new way to defeat his enemy. The daredevil froze in place for a moment, as if a plan to kill the scoundrel had formed in his head. In his mind, the young man repeated that the days of the wolf leader were coming to an end and his death was inevitable. Alerted, Yonghu noticed that everyone had disappeared and a black portal had appeared in front of him. The nervous man could not understand how the enemy had appeared behind him in just a moment. At the same time, The commander of the criminals did not lose his composure and was ready to continue the battle to the last drop of blood. Swinging his very sharp tiger claws, the killer exclaimed that they would see how the youngster would fare. Tense Linko ordered his comrades to rush into the attack as another opportunity might not arise. The cool-headed Jin used her freezing skill while the burly Chun still had a fireball at his disposal. The nimble mage in turn resorted to activating a lightning strike, which was a very powerful argument against the enemies. The nervous wolf tried to figure out where the nimble boy had gone, who had become a thorn in his side. The youngster's skills made the man tense up, and the brave man himself called him a miserable cat. After these words, an incredibly loud explosion thundered, powerful enough to destroy an entire forest. Keeping a serious look on his face, the fearless Lin emphasized that the team had done an excellent job and given a worthy rebuff. Now Yang Hu, whose body was covered in numerous abrasions, lay helplessly on the ground. Concerned, Jungin immediately reported to his brother that the enemy was still alive and dangerous. Slightly agitated, Qin Jun looked at the enemy, and her expression changed, as if something had alarmed her. Then the girl put her palm to her mouth and made a strange sound, which puzzled the main character. Putting his hand on her back, the young man asked if she was okay, but did not receive a clear answer. Looking at the rest of his comrades, the young man mentally concluded that the last attack had affected everyone. Getting up from his knees, the guy said that he knew that these murders were a new experience for everyone. But in this space, such things were inevitable. He added that they were forced to defend themselves, and moreover, he did not regret killing.